When is the last time you hugged your dad? Story 1. Honestly, never. I last met him in 2007 when I was a kid. My dad was a manipulative, abusive, unpleasant person. I'm glad he's not in my life. And Story 2. Like, a week ago. But only because I sneak attacked him and literally threw my whole peach body on top of him, whispering, "Let it happen," while he struggled to get away while boxing my ears. But that's just our dynamic relationship. Story 3. I don't remember ever hugging my father. It makes me sad that he was so standoffish about it. I hug my sons every time I see them. They need to know I care about and love them. Story 4. Well, he abandoned us for good when I was 2, so hugged my father-in-law at Christmas, though, so I'm good. Story 5. It's been a while, probably sometime before my dad told me I'm out of his life. As a dad, though, I make it a point to hug my children every day multiple times a day. There's always times for a hug. Story 6. About 6 months before he passed away in 1982, and not after that because his bone cancer made being hugged much too painful. Story 7. I'm a 45-year-old man. I have one daughter. I simply can't understand this thread. Are there really so many out there who haven't had a normal father? I tell my daughter 15 times a day that she is the love of my life and that I love her. I get really homesick when I'm forced to, for work, spend the night away from home 1 to 3 nights a month. Don't know how I would be able to carry on living if I weren't allowed to hug her every day. And I consider myself to have a full social life with friends. Dinners 3 to 4 times a month with friends, and vacations 6 to 7 weeks a year with different friends and family. What kind of weird relationship does dads have with their children in your country? Story 8. Tonight, I said, "Good night, Dad. I love you." Gave him a hug and kiss on the cheek, and we parted ways for the evening. I'm still a young adult, so I live at home, and I'm lucky enough to get the occasional hug. Good night from Pops. I'll be hugging him extra tight for y'all tomorrow. Story 9. I don't think I have to be honest. I just moved out of his place 2 months ago. He's done with me. And I am with him. I live with my uncle now. Story 10. Near Christmas. My dad and I were never very open about our love for each other until a bit over a year ago, when he said goodbye on the phone by saying a very awkward "love you." I don't know what made him choose to say it right then, but ever since we always say "I love you" to each other when we hang up, and we always have very awkward hugs when we say goodbye in person. Even a year later, we're not good at it, but it doesn't matter. Story 11. Never. Because I have never met him. My mom had me, as a teen, and he abandoned that relationship as soon as he knew she was pregnant. He's never wanted anything to do with me. Story 12. Every time I see him, so a couple of days ago, as he brought my son home from school for me. He's the best. Story 13. This afternoon, he came over to help my husband lift a few heavy things and put them in our garage. My 18-month-old loves to give group hugs, so my dad and I hugged, and I gave him a separate hug after that. Story 14. Who I call my dad. Thanksgiving weekend. My alleged but not scientifically confirmed bio-dad, probably 36-ish years ago. Story 15. I hugged and kissed him as he lay dying. And again after he had passed. This was February of 2024. Thank God for him. The kindest, purest soul this world ever knew. Thank God I had him as my father. Story 16. This afternoon when I went to visit with him and my mom after work. He is 75 years old, diagnosed with cancer about 5 years ago. I hug him every chance I get. Time is precious. Story 17. About 2 weeks ago, went to the parents' place for dinner. Got a great hug from mom and dad as I left with 2 meals worth of leftovers. Delicious. Story 18. December 27th. But I really want to give him another hug after reading these comments. And my mom too. And everyone I love. Story 19. Last summer, before I flew back home. I hate living so far from him, but he is living in a place he loves and deserves to be happy. Story 20. September 12th, 2014, the day he passed away. He, on the other hand, always has his arms around. Story 21. Today. My middle kiddo was in a Missoula play, my parents came, and my dad slipped me a 20 to pay for our ticket. It hurts him to sit for long periods of time, but he waited the whole hour to see his 6-year-old grandson on the stage. My mom let my wiggly 3-year-old sit on her lap for the whole show. Hugged them goodnight. My parents truly are the best. Story 22. Probably 17 years ago, he moved cross-country and I could never afford to visit. Dad passed away about 14 years ago. He committed. It's getting harder to remember his voice. I have a couple pictures and 0 videos. God damn it, why did I click on this before going to sleep? Story 23. The last time I saw him in 2020, right before the borders closed. He passed away in 2021, 3 days before my daughter was born, 1 month before my son passed away. I knew my son was sick, but my dad wasn't sick. Except I've been told afterwards his heart was broken by my son being so sick and not being able to protect him or me. He didn't terminate himself, but it was so fast and so weird, I find myself thinking of it as him ducking out early and taking a backroad shortcut to beat my son to the afterlife and be sure there was someone there he knew, watching him for me till I can get there. Is that mental? Sure, but I am mental by this point. Story 24. 2 weeks ago, which was the last time we saw each other in person. I'll be meeting with him this weekend again, where we will probably hug at least twice. I was blessed with one of the best dads on the planet. I don't think I could have asked for anyone else. Story 25. Like many others here, right before he passed away, he was the strongest man I've ever known, and he fought until the end. I hugged him and lied and told him it was okay and that he could rest. I'd burn worlds to hug him again. Story 26. Over 20 years ago before he passed away. I hug my son now, though, and it's the first thing that's filled that void. Story 27. Almost 40 years ago. I hugged him at his job and told him I loved him. That night, he had a massive heart attack and passed away. Story 28. Probably 2013, before he went completely off the deep end and started treating me like garbage. We don't talk any. I don't envision hugging in our future either. Story 29. I can't for the life of me remember. I do remember him being sucked up into that tornado, however, while I did nothing to help. A Man of Steel, aka Superman. Story 30. Apparently the last time I saw my father I was about 4 years old. That would have been about 1970. He has since passed away, so I guess 1970. Story 31. Lol. I don't think I've ever hugged my dad and he's still alive, and very much in my life. Maybe a brief side hug like a year ago. Story 32. My wedding 5 years ago, unfortunately. Still see him almost daily. He's just never gone out of his way to hug me. Story 33. On his deathbed, he was waiting for me 3 days in a coma to return home so that he could take his last breath. Story 34. Never. He cheated on my mom when she was pregnant and left her before I was. He almost terminated her by pushing her off a moped scooter. Unfortunately, my mom passed away from cancer at 55 and he is still alive but never tried to contact me. I'm F36 married now, have 2 kids, and a successful career. I don't give two about him. I actually have never met him or seen him in real life. If he was to be public, I would have walked right by him because I don't really know what he looks like. So very, very sad. Anyway, story 35. 38 years ago, he passed in February 1987 at 66 years old when I was 26. He only lasted a year and a half after a CA diagnosis. He had retired at age 58, after 38 years as an educator and administrator. 2 years after that, and serious theology and other studies, he was ordained deacon in our Ukrainian Catholic eparchy. He came to Canada from Ukraine at 9 years old. Gosh, I miss him. Story 36. I will never hug my father as a cybersecurity comrade played hoaxes so long his last message will be a bro, saying disgusting things about juicing my sister as he passes away. Story 37. Never. He couldn't get over his disappointment of having a daughter, which ultimately caused my parents to separate on my first birthday. After years of him voicing his disappointment in my gender and the child support payments, I stopped visiting him when I was around 12 or 13 years old. Story 38. Now that I think of it, I can't remember. TBH, we were never really comfortable with each other. I am very uncomfortable hugging him because we are not close at all. We are more like co-workers than father and daughter. Story 39. He passed away in 2002. I was 18. I'm not sure when I hugged him prior to his death. I just don't remember anymore. I guess probably at the end of May that year, when I graduated high school, for sure. That was 22 years ago. Story 40. Today, he is 80 on Wednesday, and I got to see him today for a few hours. I will be seeing him next week to celebrate his birthday. I never take this for granted. He is my favorite person in the world, and I would be lost without him. I read some of these comments and am so heartbroken for all those who are not in this position. I don't know what I'll do when this day comes for me. I dread it with every fiber of my being. Story 41. I don't have a memory of hugging him ever since I was a kid. He was cruel to us and always prioritized himself. I even gave him gifts when I was older, but he never opened. He just put it somewhere in the house where I can see it every day unopened. Story 42. It has been some time since I saw him last, probably 7 to 8 months, but I hugged him then. I call once a week. Story 43. It was a Monday. Had to be in elementary school sometime in the 80s. I don't remember. I'm 47. We get along very well, we just don't hug it out. Story 44. Well, he's been dead for 13 years, and we didn't get along for most of the 15 or so before that. Maybe 30 years at my wedding, and that was for show. Story 45. Probably when I was 8, and I remember it well because I got a sense that he didn't want a hug. I hug my girls all the time. Story 46. A week ago. Had a very rocky relationship for years and didn't speak at all for most of it. The last year we've mended our relationship. I didn't realize how much stress I was carrying around constantly hating him. I'm glad he has come to accept me and respect me, and we can have a great relationship now. Story 47. Like the blood-related guy? About 42 years ago. My stepdad? 17 years ago. They're both gone now. Story 48. I don't even remember. I haven't even seen or spoken to him since 2015. Frankly, I don't care if he's even alive, lol. Story 49. Maybe a few months before he passed away in 2019? Regardless, it doesn't feel like I missed my last opportunity to hug him. Story 50. I can't even remember. I was likely a child before the age of 5. Parents got divorced and he abandoned us. It felt horrible watching every other kid with a dad I did not have. Story 51. December 26th, 2024. When I was home last, so grateful our relationship has gotten better over the past 5 years. So grateful for that, man. Story 52. Wednesday night, he and I went to get pizza and catch up since I hadn't seen him since New Year's Eve. Yes, I spent my New Year's with my dad. And my fiancé, his girlfriend and friends' family. He's 76 and I'm 46. He's the best. Story 53. Like 17 years ago, but can't fault him on that he's dead. So in his defense, it would be a little difficult to do so. Story 54. 7 a.m. on the day he passed away. Not because he was dying. His death was unexpected. But just because he was my dad and I was hugging him goodbye. I'll never regret that the last words to my father was, "I love you." Story 55. Several times today, maybe 5 minutes ago as I write this, I tell my parents I love them every day. You never know how much longer they'll be around. Story 56. Last week, actually. That guy is one of the most unappreciated people I know. Works his peach off every day to come home to an unappreciative, grumpy family. Story 57. I don't think I have to be honest. I don't think he believes in guys showing any sort of affection towards each other. Story 58. Right before he passed away, unexpectedly, he was leaving and I made sure I hugged him goodbye. Little did I know that would be the last time I'd see him again. Story 59. Not entirely sure I ever have. It's probably been at least 30 years. My parents split when I was 3, and he became the stereotypical every other weekend dad. He was only around when it was convenient to be. Our relationship is more like he's a close family friend, but not a dad. Story 60. I don't honestly remember. I think since I was a kid, we fell apart. We rarely even talk as I live abroad, and we were never in that kind of dad-son friendship. Story 61. Before I found out that he messed up his sister while married to my mom, ejaculated on the basement carpet almost every night, kept his never-cleaned fleshlight in the same drawer as his toothbrush, and also getting an ant infestation in the house because the ants kept getting into the drawer to get to his fleshlight, and faked prostate cancer and multiple heart attacks to try and stop my mom from leaving him. He's basically the family meme now. None of us want anything to do with him because his prohibited photos addiction completely ruined his life, and he values his prohibited photos addiction more than anything else. Story 62. Last time I saw him, October, because I can't be sure he will still remember me the next time I get to visit. Story 63. Never. I've never met him. Reached out once, but he didn't care. A few conversations and asked if he wanted to meet me. His answer, no. I haven't spoken to him since. Story 64. A few months ago, while at a funeral. I did it to keep the peace, but the emotional symbolism behind it passed away long ago. Story 65. Yesterday, I just bought my first car and he hugged me before we parted at the local petrol station. I'll probably hug him tomorrow as well. He's coming over to GRT a borrowed ladder back from Mum. Story 66. About 15 years ago. I've only seen him 3 times since he walked out on my mom, because I'm a girl, when I was only 6 months old. He wants nothing to do with me or my half-sister he had a few years later. Simply because of our gender. He's a POS. Story 67. This past Christmas. He was a single dad who raised me and my brother and taught me everything I know about being a good parent. I wish I saw him more often. Story 68. Yesterday. Around the neck from behind, and for the second time ever, I got a good chokehold. We both do martial arts, so that's just how we roll. Pun intended. E-kick. Story 69. Sometime in February or March of 2023. He had come up again to see my then 18-month-old. He passed away in a motor vehicle biking crash like a month later. Miss him. Story 70. Every time I see him since I moved out, I hug him when I see him. The first time I did, he said, I can't remember the last time my kids hugged me. Story 71. Maybe when I was a kid? Me and my father didn't have the best relationship and lived more like roommates than father and son for most of my life up until he passed 19 months ago. Story 72. It will be 15 years ago in a month that he passed away. So around about that? Still miss the old illegitimate child. I've always had questions for him, often practical ones. Usually about the garden. A couple of years ago I found out he had a whole secret daughter via Ancestry DNA. That really brought up some more questions. Story 73. Good thing I was able to hug my dad many times before he passed away, and even then I wish I could hug my father one last time. Story 74. Honestly don't remember, don't have a great relationship. Told him we were pregnant with my oldest son and haven't really heard from him since. That son is now over 10 years old. Story 75. December 18th, 2022. He passed while I was hugging him. My dad passed away in my arms. I think I am incredibly lucky that this happened. Sad? Hell yes. If I pass away letting my children know how much I love them, I will be happy. If you have the relationship with your parents, hug them often. Story 76. Sometime 30 years ago, 5 years old, before CPS took us and he signed his rights away so we were given away. Story 77. Last time saw him about a month ago. I will see him again next weekend and I will hug him again. You never know when you may hug your dad for the last time. Story 78. When I was in 3rd grade, he just grabbed me while I was crying and that made me scream in fear. He gave me PTSD when I was 10 from something similar, and I can barely even give him a high five anymore. Story 79. I used to randomly kiss him on his forehead and hug him. I think the last time I did that was a couple of weeks a month ago before he passed away. Story 80. Exactly 2 weeks ago when I dropped him off at the airport after a Christmas visit. I also gave him a kiss. Story 81. Last time I saw him, live 800 miles away, so I talk to him at least weekly to say, I love you to each other. Story 82. About a week and a half ago when he dropped me off at the airport for a trip. I can't quite remember if I hugged him when I got home because I was very tired and feeling pretty gross from traveling all day. I will probably hug him next time I see him though. I love him very much. Story 83. 2 weeks ago when my son was born. He is the only grandchild to carry on the family name, so to my Chinese dad it's a very big deal. Story 84. Never. I'm 58, just not a touchy-feely family. Can't remember ever hugging my mother or sister either. Story 85. 2003. I'm 27 now. Passed away from an oxy overdose. I still live with that image in my head as if it happened last night. Story 86. Hugged? Don't know. I would have liked to when he was at the end, but he was on ECMO, so I just held his hand. That was October 14th, 2020. Story 87. I honestly don't remember. We see each other daily and are together a lot, but we're not a huggy family. If I were to just randomly hug him tomorrow, his response would probably be something along the lines of, oh no, who passed away? Or an awkward pat on the shoulder with a confused, there. Story 88. When I had to back to work on Christmas break. I am glad we got over our fight, even though I had to eat the cow sandwich. It was worth the familial peace. I am 45, and I have to start thinking about not having them around at some point. If you can, bury the hatchet. Hug your parents. Story 89. In June, leaving my half-sister's wedding in Western New Jersey. Flew home to California. He passed away this December. R.I.P. Pauls. Story 90. I hug him every time I see him. He's out of state ATM. I saw him on January 4th to deliver his birthday cake. I see him minimum of 4 times a year. Story 91. 7.5 months since he passed. Not day goes by, I wish it was longer. I actually think he sends me signs to let me know he's okay and maybe I needed to see this post. Rip Dallas Ray. Always in my heart. Story 92. Over 20 years ago, I just found out last week that he passed away back in 2018. I didn't feel a thing, other than a complete lack of surprise that no one even attempted to contact me when he passed away. Story 93. A little over 14 years ago before passing away from bone cancer. There is so much stuff I'd love for him to see if he were still here. Story 94. Yesterday, when we visited him in the care home. Sadly, they didn't tell us that there is currently a COVID outbreak of 17 people there before we came in to visit. So we hurried to leave once we knew. He wasn't positive. Hopefully we're not either. Story 95. When I was just under 3 years old. He passed away before I got to know him. Feels bad, but I have some of his belongings and a lot of stories. Story 96. Don't even remember. Haven't seen him in over a decade, even though we live in the same town, I think. Story 97. January 1st. He just had a triple bypass done on his heart on the 3rd, so he's not huggable again yet. I did kiss his head when I saw him today, though. Story 98. July 2020. I live roughly 8 hours away, and I absolutely cannot stand the area he lives in. He hates it too, but they come down to my area to vacation once a year. This post kinda hit me hard, though. It's been a while, and normally I don't think about it until plans of seeing them comes close. I'ma give him a call tonight.